Welcome to the Cutting Room Floor podcast of Grace Church, where we talk about things that didn't make it into the sermon or things that we'd like to say a little bit more about. I'm Larry. I'm one of your pastors. I'm joined by another one of our pastors, Taylor Brown,
Hey, everyone.
whom I refuse to be in the room with right now, which is, if you're watching on video, we're on Zoom because he's an Eagles fan. I'm a Saints fan.
Yes.
We're not friends right now.
Yes. Listen, if it were just a normal run-of-the-mill game, one team wins by 10, 14, that would have even been better. But the game was so intense that I think we're both still like tense from the game itself. It was the Eagles won, but it was like back and forth and what was the greatest lead? Like 5 points the whole game?
It wasn't
Something
much.
like that. Yeah.
No.
You can see here. I'm glad we're on video today. Real quick, see, I'm gonna try to do like my Vanna White. See right here is an Eagles football signed by. Here's a fun fact: Javon Curse, who's one of my favorite players, and here's why. He went to Norfolk Myers High School, which is where I went. He played football at the University of Florida, which is where I went, and he had the longest years of his career with the Philadelphia Eagles, which is my favorite team. Like Javon Curse, 3 for 3. Shout out Javon. You're probably not listening, but.
I tuned out a while ago, actually. I did. We're not actually refusing to be in the room together. I'm at home with a sick kid, so that's why we're doing this. But
right before the storm coming too.
Right, we have a storm pressing down on us. Hope everybody's staying safe. Looks like most of it's going to go around us, but we're still on that dirty side. So everybody stay safe out there. Yeah. So, absolutely. Hey, we were in week 2 of the Win at Home series, which is it's just turning out to be such a good series. Like this was kind of a felt need series that you put together for us and brought it to the teaching team retreat, and it's definitely hitting where people need it in all different home situations,
Yeah, and one of the, we've said it the past couple of weeks, but I think one of the coolest parts of being, and you would agree with this, I think, as a pastor at Grace Church, is that this is not like your classic family or home series that you'd see at necessarily other places, where it's really focused on like your marriage and your kids and kind of that's it. We're really trying to talk about home to where, yes, like marriages are talked about and your kids are talked about, but in a way that's a little bit broader, because let's be real, all of our homes are different. All of our homes look vastly different. And the people we have in them look even different. Like people we would even consider home are different. And so it's been fun to kind of cast a wide net. And I think we're seeing some really cool things that God is doing, through that, which is awesome.
Yeah. I think one of the things we tried to recognize as we prepped the series is we have homeless folks in our congregation and traditional families and single people, like you said. And I think our working definition of a home that Wes gave us in week 1 is a really good one, and we've kind of stuck with that image that it's the people that you do life with.
Yep, absolutely.
And hopefully we all have those people. So we're trying to help everybody win at home, whatever home looks like.
Exactly. That core, what Wes's phrase was, core community, I think is what he said. And I thought that was such a good line. If it's the core community of people. So it's been fun. It's been fun to dive into some of this stuff.
So when Wes started us off in this, in this series, he started talking about the foundation of the home, and then you kind of moved us into what goes on top of that as we start to build it out. And you started that off talking about your own experience with your home being built, which nobody else listening would have any reason to know this, but you and I live in the exact same house, just mirror image.
We really do.
We use the same builder. Like every time I see a picture of your house, I'm like, oh wait. It's just backwards.
Yes, like where you're zooming from right now. I'm like, yep, that's that's the room. Yeah. I hear you.
So I get your whole experience with watching it go up. Of course, we were watching our home be built from Illinois. So one of the things I talked about was like checking satellite images to see what was going on. And one of the first things I saw, because like Google Street View is still just like this clump of trees. Like my home does not exist on Google Street View. But a satellite image, we could see the foundation being poured. Um, and while that's really important, and that's what Wes talked about in week one, it's not terribly exciting.
No, it's like, okay, some stuff got laid on the ground. Big deal.
Right. Yeah. So you talked about like being able to finally see like there's windows, there's a roof, there's some rooms, and now it's starting to take shape. And we had a really similar experience. I got to come down and our realtor arranged for us to walk through, and everything was unfinished, but the walls were up. And now I'm like, okay, I'm taking pictures, sending them back to Brittany. I'm like, now I can start to see the flow, and we could dream about what the rhythm of our life was going to be like.
Exactly. Yeah, it was the same experience for us of like it turned from like, okay, there's progress, okay, they're moving, okay, they're doing something to like, oh, like I can see our home now.
Yeah.
And it's the visual aspect. That's what you said. Like you can see yourself in it. You can begin to envision some of these things of like what is our home going to look like? What are the rhythms going to be? What's the flow going to be? And so I think for the series we've used this home visual, and it's like the foundation. It's got to start there, because if you have a great frame and nothing built, not built on solid, it's just going to collapse or fall
Yeah.
over or whatever. But yet the opposite is true as well. Like you can have a solid foundation, but if there's no strategy, no intentionality, no understanding of what God wants to build on top of that,
Mhm.
then it's kind of like, okay, foundation's
Yeah.
solid, but
Yeah, there's no progress, there's no growth.
yeah, exactly.
I think about that like just with the spiritual life in general. Like Pete Scazzaro says, like you can be a 1 year old Christian 22 times instead of a
Yes,
22-year-old Christian because nothing has progressed. Like
exactly.
how pointless would that have been? Like
Exactly.
have a great foundation and then nothing else happens.
Right, and then it's that way for years and years and years.
Right.
I that's a great, yeah, that's a great visual. Then quote that Pete gives, because that's so true. And the frame, like if I had to attach a word to frame, meaning like, okay, so foundation we would say is like secure, right? I would say frame, like this is the strategic part.
Yeah.
This is the like, okay, so now we got this firm foundation, we got this thing that's secure. So what now are we going to do
Hmm.
from that? And it's still God. Like, and I think that's the one. That's I had a line. I don't know if I said it all the services, but I had a line written at least where I said, God's not just our foundation, but He's our general contractor too.
Mm.
Like He builds upon the foundation. So it's
Yeah.
not like a thing where, okay, we got God as a foundation, now we take over and we do it ourselves and build it. It's not that either, but it's really saying, okay, I'm placing God as the foundation and God at the center, and now looking to Him to go, God, how do I build on top of this? How do I,
Yeah.
how do I build a rhythm and a flow for my life that and my home that honors you and is best for us and helps us to thrive?
Yeah, and you talked about that in terms of direction,
Hmm.
and there were three different types of direction that you
Yeah.
talked about, and I had a lot of fun talking about those, like because you could tell who in the congregation it was hitting. Like
Oh
you'd say,
yeah.
"Okay, no direction," they'd be like, "Yup,"
Yep.
like so. You said no direction, too much direction, bad direction.
Yep. Yep.
What's that look like, just in a home in general?
Yeah. So I'll go just purely home visual, and I can share from my own experience too. That's probably even the best. So no direction, or I would say this is like our. I've gone through seasons of all these struggles. I would say no direction now is the easiest one for us to drift into. This is when Elisa and I don't have the weekly meeting to get on the same page, and we're not kind of strategically thinking ahead, and so we're just reactionary and we're
Mm.
impulsive. Like we're just like it our best planning is kind of like,
Yeah,
all right, let's see where the wind blows. And it's very reactionary, it's very impulsive, it's very there's not really intentionality. It's very much like, all right, what's next? What about tonight? It feels really like survival mode.
hmm
um, and hear me, there are seasons where that happens, but if we constantly live with no direction, it wears on us, and that's why you said, it just leads to chaos, where we feel
yeah,
like we're constantly in chaos. Too much direction is the complete opposite. It's like you have a regimented home, but it's like to the extreme. I
hmm
mean, it's like every minute is mapped out, and you have goals for your home that become obsessive, and your schedules are way too packed, and to-do lists are way too full, and it's constant go, 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 go. And it just leads to this kind of want to control. And what I've found in seasons where I've wanted too much direction, this is really on me, when Elise and I got married. I just was such a perfectionist. I created a really bad environment in our home. It was high stress, high anger. This was not good. Was not good. And it was all my own insecurity and unhealth and brokenness.
Sure.
But what I discovered then is I had way too much direction, and when one little thing would go not according to what I wanted or was out of my control, I would go sideways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would just be done.
Which I imagine you were constantly bumping into, because one of my best friends says all the time, control is an illusion.
It is. Yeah, it really is. It really is.
When you have that desire for control, you're going to bump into that all the time.
Yeah, and looking back, I'm like, well, no wonder I was so ticked off. No wonder I was so frustrated, because I'm trying to control things that I have no business trying to control. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality. Mm-hmm. And so there was a really big struggle there. But that's too much direction. It's this hyper control, hyper, kind of too regimented. And then bad direction, it's really like where our homes are based around something, or our homes kind of flow in the direction towards something, but it's just not good. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's an addiction that kind of dictates what our home is like. Maybe it's an unchecked emotion, maybe it's anger, or whatever the case may be, that kind of dictates what the home is. Maybe it's our own selfish ambition, or in financial gain, not in like I want to be in a secure place, but in like I'm obsessed with just making money, kind of a place that let's face it, those things create a direction for our home, but it's just not life-giving. It's just not a good direction.
It's just bad. They're bad. It seems like such a simple word. Like we wordsmith stuff so much. Yeah. Like, so when you read bad direction, like, okay, like the preacher's running out of steam. Like, no, there's just no other way to say that. It's just bad direction.
Just bad.
Just bad.
Funny enough, because I had the first, when writing this, we'll go behind the curtain for a second. When writing this sermon, I had the first two solid, and I was just going to do those two. And then I felt like the Holy Spirit was prompting me to say, like, no, there's a third one, and we're going to name it.
Yeah.
And for my own sake too, like my home growing up, was based on bad direction. It was sins, sins in my home and sins in my family, that just kind of derailed our home, and that crushed feeling, like I felt that's real. And so it's just, these are directions that just don't give life. They create a frame for your home, but it's not a healthy frame. It's not a good frame. It's not one you're going to thrive in. So yeah, those are the directions. And I try to be so intentional to say, like, I have experienced all three. I still do experience all three. Like, if you think out over like a 3-year time period, for example, like, yeah, there's been times where I've tried to have too much direction and create control. We've had no direction. It's been chaos. And then, yeah, like, there's times where it's like, if myself or Lisa or someone's in a rut, like our home begins to go in like a bad direction that just crushes us. So go through all of these. We go through all these. It's not just only one or one or the other. We all have one that we lean into more.
Right.
But we experience all of them throughout life.
Yeah. So what would you say to a family, again, whatever that looks like, whatever your core community piece looks like, what would you say to a core community family group that is just experiencing chaos in one of these areas?
Yeah. I know it sounds so simple, but it really, I would say it's twofold. It's first, we have to lay down our design. Like whatever we're doing or not doing, we have to lay that down. And it takes humility to admit this isn't working. Yeah. What I'm doing right now is not working. And our home's not thriving because of it. And then the second piece of that is to look to God. And this takes even more humility, I think. It's to say, what I'm trying to do on my own isn't working, and I need to look to God for the solution. Because no matter what direction it is, too much, bad, no direction, God has the answer for all of it. God has the answer for chaos. God has the answer for control, because He is in control, and God has the redeeming power to lift us up when we're crushed. So I would say first, it's to just be humble and just honest and say what I'm doing is not working, and that's okay. Like it's okay, because we're human. We have limits. And then also to say, it's time to look to God now. Like the way I'm doing is not working. I gotta lay this down. And I gotta pick up my, lift my eyes to the Lord and let Him dictate it.
Yeah. That's so good. So we talked about at all three campuses just some like practical examples about creating these rhythms of faith in our homes, and you talked about that. We talked about that in terms of the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and the command to talk about these things with your children when you're waking, when you're sleeping, when you're traveling, to put them on the doorposts of your home. And we talked about how that's taken literally sometimes, but we gave some really practical tips for creating these rhythms in home. Can you just talk some more about those?
Yeah, so for rhythms, well, actually, first let me go back real quick. So the Shema, what I love about it is it Moses starts with this, like he starts with the bedrock. He starts with command, like here it is, love Lord your God, and then he gives the how, like how we can continually do this, how it can get passed on. And so what was so beautiful looking at this sermon and writing this was like, oh, so okay, so here's the direction,
Mm-hmm.
and then Moses literally gives the application. He gives the truth, and he gives the
Yeah.
application, like through rhythms and through reminders. So for rhythms, we talked about how really it takes intentionality in the home, rhythms in the home, to develop an everyday faith. An everyday faith is a faith that isn't just present at church or at youth group, or when you're serving. It's a faith that's present in the home, kind of and throughout your day. Meaning maybe you have your own prayer time as a family. You're thinking about God. You're focusing on God. You're spending time in solitude. In the middle of your day, you're lifting concerns up to Him. Whatever the case may be. And we talked about, in order to really develop those rhythms, one thing you can do is leverage the times of the day you already have.
Right.
Let's face it, our schedules are busy. Even if we have no direction, the chances are, because we're living in chaos, it feels like we're jumping from one thing to another.
Mm-hmm.
If too much direction, chances are we're jumping from one thing to another. If we have bad direction, the thing that's leading our life and leading our home is consuming all of our time and energy. And so to say, like, okay, I want you to start 10 different things, it's probably not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the times of the day we have? So we talked about 4 times. We talked about wake time, like literally you wake up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Meal time, so when you're eating at any point in the day. Travel time, when you're going from one place to another, whether that be work, school, a friend's house, whatever. And then bedtime, like when you go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it look like to leverage all four of those times, or a couple of those times, and
Mm-hmm.
turn the focus back on God? What would it look like to say, every mealtime I'm going to do this, or I'm going to lead my family in this? What would it look like to say, hey, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to build a new 30-minute routine. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to set my alarm 30 minutes early, which I know for some of us, we're like, I get up at 4 a.m. So like maybe choose a couple of the other ones.
Yeah.
But for some of us that get up at, guess what? Some of us who can wake up at 7 a.m. and kind of do our stuff, set an alarm for 6:30.
Mm-hmm.
And build a 30-minute rhythm where you're having 30 minutes intentionally focused on God every morning, every waking time. And so for rhythms, it's really leveraging those times we already have that are in
Yeah.
existence. I think that's the
Yeah, I think one of the things I talked about at Central was in leveraging the times we already have. Like I just talked about for myself, like I have commute time built to my day. Like I've got a decent stretch from dropping the girls off at school to fighting the morning traffic and getting to church. Like I could sit and complain about the traffic, which is just going to get worse. But I mean, I've been through a whole year of that now. Or I can lean in.
yeah, yeah,
And my lean has been that's when I'm going to listen to a devotional podcast. That's or when I'm going to completely unplug and be in silence before the Lord. Like so take advantage of those times that they already have. And I think that was a good practical piece because no matter what your day looks like, you have those times.
have those times, and it looks way different. Like
Yeah.
my meal times look way different than, like, let's say Pastor Wes's.
Mm-hmm.
Way different, because I got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old at the table, and I got two dogs trying to eat the food off the table, and I got
Yes and
like
amen.
right, just like
Yeah.
just it's just nuts. And so our meal times look different, but we both have it.
Yeah.
Um, one rhythm I'll share real quick, and then I'll jump to reminders. I started doing this too. So I've shared before that Gemma our daughter has always had trouble sleeping at night. It's kind of been a fear of hers. And so recently we've hit a pretty good spot to where she does her bedtime routine, and then we'll just stand by her door. I'll literally stand by her door for like 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes max, and she kind of falls asleep, and that gets her to sleep. She feels safe, and then she stays she stays asleep the
Mhm.
whole night and wakes up in the morning. And so I used to get like all frustrated about that, like oh, why can't she just go to sleep? Why is this?
Mhm.
And so not too long ago, what I started to do is I started to just pray for my kids while I stood there.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at Jim in her doorway, and then Tatum's doorway, because our house, and then
Yeah.
Tatum's doorway,
It's just a mirror image, baby.
Tatum's door is right here.
Mhm.
Um, and so I just would start praying for my kids,
Mm.
um, specifically during that time. Every little thing I could think of, whether it was like I pray for the kid being mean to Gemma, and I pray that she would use a strong voice, and I would pray that she would whatever the case may be. Um, but that time has been it's been redeemed now.
Yeah.
When before, like you said, like with you in traffic, before I would be grumbling, like,
Yeah.
oh, why I gotta stand here every da, 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 da.
Yep.
Now it's like, no, no, no. I look forward to that time, like, because now I get to I'm praying for my kids during that time.
Yeah.
Um, and so just stuff like that. It's just so helpful for rhythms.
Yeah.
Um, but then the Shema continues, and it talks about the reminders,
Mhm.
um, and like we had shared, like this is taken literally, and they took these commands literally, which they should have. Today it looks a little different for us, possibly, and there's some really cool contextual stuff I didn't get to in the sermon
Mhm.
about specifically that section. So a couple things. The first thing is that it, there, the nature of Moses' words for tie them to your arms,
Mhm.
place them on your heads, put them on your doorposts, that was meant as an over the top, all in expression
Mm.
to have it be a reminder for
Okay.
you. Like it was meant to be, it was meant to be more than just like, oh, have a secret symbol that you kind of know what that means. I mean, the
Yeah.
most is speaking, saying this is over the top to show that you are all in on this. Um, if you had to do like one commentary had a great line of like if you had to do in today's world or today's words, let me find it because I want to read it verbatim. It says get storybooks about God's ways for your kids. Listen to it on your iPhone. Wear badges reminding you and others of God's ways. Fly the flag in your front yard. Put it on the lawn and all your billboards with neon lights. I thought that was awesome. Like that would be like a modern day, saying
Yeah.
of that. The other thing too that was really neat with that is it wasn't just reminders for ourselves in our own homes. There was a communal aspect to this too.
Yes.
And so it wasn't just, and this is like a whole 5 minute tangent, and I was already like pushing, a little over 30.
No.
I cut 2 pages of this sermon, by the way. I don't know if you knew that. By the time I preached it, I had cut 2 pages before I even preached it because I'm like, I just don't have time for all this. This is a piece of it. So there's a communal aspect of this to where this was not just tie them to your hands and foreheads door on your doorposts
Mm.
for your own home. It was a sign for your home and for others to know too, to
Mhm.
remind others, to help others remember.
Wow.
And there's a communal piece that when you think about this, I mean, it widens the circle even more of like this isn't just about our own homes being reminded of who God is, who we are and whose we are. This is about like we help others in this as well. We help other homes, if you will,
Yeah.
be reminded of who they are and whose they are.
Yeah.
And that's just that's just a piece that we didn't get to dive into a lot, but I think it has a lot of weight. It has a lot of meaning. And I think it's really important that
Yeah.
it's not just about for the sake of ourselves. Really the call of being a Christ follower is not just about us, it's for the sake of others.
Mhm.
That's a drumbeat that's even carried here in this reminders piece of it's not just about our own home and just for us, it's about what that says to other people in our community too.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful stuff. Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody at Central who is taking literally the putting reminders around. They got married in the last several months, and they had all these scripture signs at their wedding, and they just got all put away.
Yeah.
And she came to me and she goes, "I'm putting these up throughout my house, like
Oh,
I'm going to be reminded on the daily."
awesome.
Things as simple as love is patient, love is kind.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
So that's I think those are simple things, but they
Yeah.
create those rhythms, those reminders, those signposts in our lives and in the lives of others.
They do. They do. I have a
Yeah,
funny.
incredible.
I have an example of this too. I'll share it real quick because I know we got to wrap up in a little bit. So when we were at our old house before we moved into this one, and this was back when I'd shared like when Lisa and I first got married. Gemma was really young. I was creating a really not great home environment, and it was in that home that I really began what I call the journey inward,
Hmm.
where I read EHS. um I read Abba's Child first. God wrecked me in that. It's
Hmm.
by Brennan Manning.
Everybody.
I read EHS, and then just really like the way still some struggle with sin and ways that I expressed that came to light, and I had to deal with it. I had to face it,
Yeah.
all in that kind of period in that home, and all throughout that we had a small sign that hung above, we didn't have a laundry room. It was like a metal. It was like an really old building. It was like a metal closet that you just open, and it had like the stackable washer dryer that was really thin. So it wasn't even a laundry room. It was like the laundry closet. So above that, we had this sign, this small sign, and it said something like "Give grace daily."
Mm.
And I remember somewhere along this journey of God just really wrecking and transforming me, kind of through that season of my life. Um, I remember I noticed that sign for the first time in a new way. Of
Mhm.
like it became not just this thing like, oh, give grace daily to the people that I serve in my ministry. But I read it in this sense of like, it's give grace daily to the people in my home,
Mhm.
and it's give grace daily to me.
Yeah.
And that sign became a reminder for me
Mm.
where I would look at that sign, having gone through this experience, this transforming experience, and I would see it in a new way. I literally have not I literally have not thought of that until right now,
Wow.
until you shared that. But that like this was an example that lived out for me, of that sign. Something clicked one day, and then every day I'd go in my kitchen, which is because the laundry closet was right next to the kitchen, and I would look up and I'd see it and go, all right,
Okay. Yeah.
daily. Yeah, it was just I don't know, it was in this lived out is what it was.
Yeah. So if the frame of the house is the strategic direction
Yeah.
to see the flow, then we need to be reminded that God's strategy, God's direction is always better than anything we can come up with on our own.
Absolutely.
Like the Proverbs passage that we brought in, 1921. You can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail. Like we need to be reminded of that,
Yeah.
and you were reminded of that uh with Give Grace Daily, and this young woman from Central is going to be reminded that daily when she walks through her house and sees love is patient, love is kind, like
Awesome.
because that's the home, that the types of homes we want to build and the lives that we want to build, and I can't do that on my own.
No,
So
not
I
at all.
need those reminders of who I am, um, and who he is.
That's good. That's so good. And we're just reminded, we need this. We're forgetful people.
Mhm.
And I talked a lot about that in the sermon, so I'm not going to rehash every piece of that here. But we if the people if the people that watched Moses part the Red Sea
Come on.
would literally a moment of, you could say, days, hours, however you want to measure it, later, would then be building idols to another god.
Mhm.
Who am I to think
Mhm.
that I will not forget?
Yeah, or please bring us out of Egypt. It's terrible. And 5 minutes later, take us back to Egypt.
Yes.
At least we
Yes.
had food there. You brought it, like, yeah.
Yes. Yes. After
We,
watching the miracle, like after
yeah.
watching one of the greatest physical miracles that we read about in scripture, the parting of this sea for the people to cross. Like, who are we to think we're not going to forget? Who are we to
And
think who are we to think we're invincible from that? Like, we're going to forget. We are prone to forget, prone to wander. I quoted the,
yeah,
come that fast in my sermon,
and
of like,
that's kind of where I want to end, because I think the strongest part of the sermon. I haven't watched the shores, but the moment at the Cape campus and at Central campus is when we talked about what would happen if we forgot.
yeah,
when we went to the passage in Judges that after Joshua died, an entire generation grew up who didn't know the Lord. They didn't remember because they didn't do what Moses commanded in the Shema to tell these stories to your
Right.
children. So, and that is one of the most haunting verses of Scripture
It is.
to me as a former student pastor, but just as a follower of Jesus in general.
It is.
I,
It is.
it can happen so easily.
And that generation's story is summed up in that sentence. How sad is that?
Yeah.
How sad is that? Like, that's the story of their generation. And hear me. And it's not their fault. Like meaning
Right.
the generation that didn't know.
Yeah.
It's not their fault.
Yeah.
Like they have no part in this. It's the generation before that forgot.
Yeah.
And so it's this heartbreaking piece of like, we have to do the things to remember to get it passed on. And I love Joshua. It's one of my favorite books of the Bible. Possibly a sermon series coming soon to Grace Church. Well, we'll see. I gotta develop it a little
Coming
bit.
soon to the cutting room floor.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. And what this verse shows is it's twofold. It's not one or the other. Meaning, it took an intentional leader
Mm-hmm.
and intentional homes and people
Yes.
to see this covenant renewed and passed on.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be an intentional leader and unintentional people, because then the leader's just talking, and nobody's actually doing it, and we still end up with a generation forgetting.
Yeah.
And it also takes an intentional leader, because once Joshua died, that's when things got off course, and we saw maybe a gap in leadership and then a gap in the homes of people not doing these things. And it takes both.
Yeah.
It takes people to just give these reminders. That's what I just wanted to. I was trying to tearfully remind people that this is so important. This just matters so much.
That's why we're doing this series. We're trying to give people resources to do this in their core communities. And it's why you and I get up and do what we do every day. That's the holy discontent in me.
It is.
I don't want that for my daughter's generation. You don't want it for your kids' generation. And the thought of a generation rising up that doesn't know the Lord. I think that's just where we landed. The whole thing is we'll do everything we can as Grace Church to make sure that's not our story.
Absolutely. And I spoke on behalf of our pastors. I was laughing. I'm like, I'm speaking on behalf of everyone. And that's one of my core things. Like, I don't speak for people, but I'm like, and this one time I'm going to.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak on behalf of everybody.
Yeah, but no, go ahead. Because I was saying the same thing down at Central. Like, Grace Church, this will not be our story.
No, we're not gonna let it. We're the best that we can do. We're not gonna try to not let it happen.
Yeah. As far as it depends on me.
Yeah. I'm gonna post, by the way. I'll send it to you and Thomas right now.
Okay.
I do want to post some resources for parents in the show notes.
Okay.
I'm gonna rattle a couple off real quick. One of them is the Just a Phase material.
Yeah.
So if you have kids, meaning 0 to 18, please go to the show notes and check out this stuff. It helps you understand the phase your kid is in and how you can best leverage that. And guess what? Here's what's really cool. It gives you some things to do during those ideal times of the day. Mm-hmm. Like things you do with your kids during wake time and bedtime and like when you have a preschooler bath time and when you have an older kid drive time and all those things. So Just a Phase, please look at that. And the second one is called Parent Cue. If you have kids, once again, if you got young adults too, so this is like, I would say this goes even beyond 18. Please check this out. This is a site that has so many different resources, so many helpful posts, so many helpful blogs, so many helpful resources when it comes to just anything in parenting to help you become a little more intentional in your family. So those two sites I will post in I'll send it to you and Thomas. I'll post. If you are a parent, please check both of these out. Please reach out to me as well if you want more info on it. I can get you a ton of good stuff on it. But those are great starting places.
Yeah, that's great. I'd add in there, living room liturgy is one that we use in our house from seedbed. If you don't know where to start with these rhythms, this gives some structure to being and doing and becoming church, even in your home.
Yeah.
and it's a great rhythm for our family. So Taylor, this has been rich. It's been good. We've got one more week to go in Win at Home with you and the other Taylor.
Taylor and Taylor.
Yeah, Taylor and Taylor Incorporated coming up this Sunday at the Cape campus.
And I'm not going to spoil anything for the podcast because I want it to be a surprise for next week.
It's going to be.
But you all, let me just say this: you all need to watch and listen to the podcast next week. I'm not even going to be on it, but you all just need to watch and listen. Okay, that's just all I'm going to say. It's going to be fun. It's going to be good.
Putting the pressure on.
It's going to be good. It's going to be entertaining. That's all I'm going to say. So. Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, I hope this has been helpful to you and your family, your home, whatever home looks like for you. We want you to win in your journey with Jesus. We want to be a part as Grace Church. We want to be a part of making sure that there's not a generation that rises up that doesn't know the Lord. So this is what we want to spend on and be spent in. And we hope that you'll join us in that. So thanks for listening along today. We'll see you next time. Have a good week.
Bye.